Hi everyone, in part 2 of this Pathfinder School Intermediate Survival Course Tell-All, Daryl talks about his attempts at a bow drill, trying not to drown, and the biggest mistakes yet.
We're getting ready to start processing this for bow drill, and he said, that's not tulip poplar, that's maple, and certainly no good for a bow drill.
So tell me about it.
It was, I don't know if it was a trip of a lifetime, but it was definitely something that was on my bucket list.
Yes.
Always wanted to do. My intention was to go down. My goal was to go down and meet Dave Canterbury and have fun.
Go where?
Ohio.
Yes.
Pathfinder School, Southeast Ohio. That was my intention, was to go down and just meet Dave, meet the guys, meet the instructors. I've been watching them on YouTube for years. That was my goal, just go down and have fun.
When you went for the course or
Yes.
in general?
When I went for the course.
Okay.
So I didn't go down with the big aspirations of that I was going to pass the course. I didn't put that kind of pressure on myself.
No.
So I just went down. If I passed, if I failed, then whatever happened, happened. And so there was no big stress, no big pressure on me to pass. And it was like I said, it was on a bucket list, so it was definitely the.
So why Ohio? Why Dave Canterbury? Why the Pathfinder School?
I think right now, Dave Canterbury and the Pathfinder School, I think, as far as I know, are probably the most prominent outdoor survival schools, certainly in North America, if not the world right now, that I know of. There was a couple here in Canada, but that I know of right now, I think Dave is the most prominent in North America right now.
He's top of his game.
I think so.
And you're a big fan.
I am.
And you watched a lot of his videos. You read a lot of his books.
Yep. Watched Dual Survival. But I've probably seen 90% of his YouTube videos.
3 times.
Some of them 5, 6, 15 times, yes.
Okay, so you get on a plane, you go to Ohio.
Go to Ohio. Land in Columbus, rent a car, drive down to Wellston, and meet Dave. And he's just like he is in the videos. He's pretty to the point, but he's just one of the guys. So we leave there then. We leave the meeting point and head out to the school and take all of our gear and throw it out on the parking lot and sort through what gear we have, what we need, what we don't need. And they say, no, you can have that, but you can't have that, and you need this. And so we make sure that everybody's on the same page. We all have the same gear, and then it starts. So it was like, I don't know, 8 o'clock on Thursday morning, and we started.
And you started in the school.
Yep.
Which was, well, it's featured in all of his videos.
Yes. So it's the Pathfinder School is on the Pathfinder property, and you can see the outdoor classroom is this where he does most of his videos, in the outdoor classroom. So
and you got some training on navigation, on.
Yeah, so I think, so started off in the morning. I think what might have been one of the first things we talked about is we went on a resource walk. Might have been one of the first things we had done. So we walked around the school property looking at things like cattail and tulip poplar and different kinds of birches, pines, yarrow. And then while we're looking at all these things, we're talking about some of the medicinal purposes for them, some of the different ways to harvest them, when you would harvest them, why you would harvest them. And we just did a resource walk, and they were subtly dropping hints about things that we could use them for, but we weren't allowed to collect anything. That was clear. So, they said that this is tulip poplar, but you're not allowed to touch it. And so then we went back to the classroom, and I think we did, again, then we had like just a short little lecture on, it might have been like on navigation. And then we went out then, so we were at that point then we were in 2-man teams. So it was myself and my battle buddy, what they're called. And so we went out then and did a navigation exercise, which might have been like, I don't know, maybe 2 hours kind of thing. And then we were back then for another short lecture, and then we were back out again to, I think we had to go back out then, I think, and gather some materials kind of based on the lecture that we had that morning. So it was this a constant, you're in the classroom for a short lecture, and then you're out into the field gathering materials, like I said, going from point to point to point to point to point, doing navigations, and then picking up resources as you go, all in the while. Then you've always had this time limit in the back of your head that if you don't make the time limit, then you lose all of the points that you've gathered. So for every outcome that you meet, you get a point for. Every waypoint that you find, you get a point for. But if you're back 5 minutes late, you lose all those points.
Okay, so hours spent, time spent in training, hours spent navigating and running around. There's no home base. There's no shelter. When does all that happen?
So there was. So the school is your home base, and we slept at the school in primitive shelters. So the school is in a bit of a field, but it's surrounded by a wooded area. So we slept in that wooded area, just in primitive shelters. But yes, we would constantly come back. The school, that outdoor classroom, was ground zero. That was our step off point. So we always return to that point.
So what did your primitive shelter look like on that first night?
On that first night was a tarp tent. Was night number one. Again, so they did a quick little demonstration on how to build a tarp tent. We've been building tarp tents for years. So that was night number one, was just a tarp tent. Again, so we had a battle buddy. Each one of us had a tarp. So we just used one tarp, build a tarp tent, and that was our objective for that night. And then the following morning, then we had an inspection at 6 in the morning, and they looked at our tarp tent, and we couldn't take it down till then, but we had to spend the night. That first night we slept in a tarp tent.
And that inspection was to determine if you got the allotted points for your shelter.
Yes, well, I guess to make sure that it was still standing and that we had, in fact, built one.
Okay, so you're in day 2 now. You haven't talked about food. You haven't talked about
What food?
fire. You haven't talked about water.
So
I know the answers to these questions, but...
So, again, so when we met in the parking lot, we were told what we were allowed to bring for food. So we had a couple different criteria. We were allowed to bring one pre-made, just add water, dehydrated meal. We were allowed one of those. We were allowed one bag of trail mix, or one bag of beef jerky, or one of something. It was a couple different options we were allowed. So I had one meal of just add water, kind of dehydrated food. I had one meal of that, and I had one bag of beef jerky, and that was all I had for 4 days. They rationed us on water, so when we got there in the morning on day 1, we had unlimited water, and they kept on hinting, drink water, drink water, drink water, drink water. And then at one point then they said, that's it, dump out your canteens, you're done. No more water until you get fire. So it was always in the back of my mind that I was always leery about eating too much food if I didn't have enough water to process what I was eating. So really didn't eat that much. And for the most part, we were kept busy, so we never really got hungry. So occasionally I'd pick on a little bit of beef jerky, but other than that, I didn't eat for most of the 4 days. Just a little bit of beef jerky. I never did eat the meal, and I never ate the whole bag.
You did a lot of walking, a lot of navigation.
Miles and miles and
miles. Miles and miles and miles through all sorts of terrain, new terrain.
All new terrain, new forest, new maps. So I left the boreal forest and I went to the eastern woodlands, so it was new trees and new ground. Even like the scale of the map was a different kind of scale than I was used to, so it kind of threw me off a little bit.
But you weren't just on dry land.
No, there was one on the last day. We did a water crossing scenario, so we had to take all of our gear, everything that we owned, and wrap it up inside of our tarps. So sleeping bags, rucksacks, everything that we owned got wrapped up into our two tarps, and then it was buoyant enough that the two of us swam across a pond holding onto our gear, and we had the simulated water crossing.
Buoyant enough. You don't wrap all your gear in a tarp and make it float. How did you make it float?
Each one of us had a 20-liter stuff sack, a dry sack. So that was, a waterproof bag. So when we filled it full of air and then packed it in with our rucksacks, it was buoyant enough.
Big adventures.
It was.
And a different shelter every night, right?
So the first night was a tarp tent. Second night, we had to do a hammock. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't sleep in a hammock. So we had, again, like I said, there was myself, my battle buddy. They each had a tarp. So one tarp we turned into a hammock, and pitched a tarp across the top. And so then we were supposed to sleep in shifts, so that because at that point we had a fire, and we had to keep the fire going, so we were sleeping in shifts. So I was supposed to sleep in a hammock for part of the night, then we were supposed to rotate out. I didn't like the hammock, so I spent the whole night
On the ground.
cowboy camping on the ground with Zahn,
How'd you get, who's on?
cat.
Dave's cat.
I woke up at one point and Zahn was underneath me.
It was too cold for Zahn.
It was by the fire, so it wasn't really cold, but
And how'd you get fire?
so on day one, we were supposed to go out. This is a long story.
It's okay.
So on day one, we were supposed to go out and find stuff for a bow drill fire. So we were given examples. So we should have been looking for something like tulip poplar or white pine, or there was 3 or 4 different things that we were told to go find of things that would work for a bow drill fire. And we have been given a lesson on how to do a bow drill fire, and we were sent out. So this is on day one. And I really didn't understand at that point that we had a time limit. So we had to be back, I think, by 5 o'clock. We were sent out to go on, we had to find a point to look for. We were just headed out, I'm guessing, and once we got to that point, we should have found the resources that we needed. Again, I wasn't quite used to the scale of the map, and not quite sure. And anyway, we overshot our bearing, and we walked too long. We walked too far. We kept going, and so by the time, and at that point, then I was starting to get overheated. I was getting tired, and so I guess at some point we realized, okay, we've gone too far. Let's turn around and go back. So we turned around and headed back, and we knew that we could not make our timing. We knew that we were gonna blow it. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so we're a bunch of grown adults here. I'll go back, I'll check in with the instructors, and I'll leave again. I just figured, so at some point we'd have free time, and I'd just go back out and I'd get the resources that I need. So we were late getting back, but we didn't have any of the materials that we were supposed to go out to find. So we didn't have any tulip poplar, we didn't have any fines. There was no smalls. We didn't have a tinder bundle. We didn't have anything for a bow drill. We didn't have a spindle. We had nothing. And again, I'm thinking we'll just go back out after we check in. And that's when it dawned on me that no, you're not going back out. So the first night then, all of the other students, or most of the other students, had gathered the materials that they needed, and they're sat down and they're working on their bow drill fires. And some of them get their fires in the first night. But myself and my battle buddy absolutely sat there twiddling our thumbs because we didn't have bow drills. We had no materials. And one of the rules is that you can't gather materials at the school property. So we were literally twiddling our thumbs that first night. So we didn't get the objectives for that first night. So the objective for that would have been to get a bow drill fire. We didn't do that. So the second objective then would have been to make char from a fire. Well, we didn't have our fire, so we couldn't make char. Didn't get that done. And then we were also supposed to make a smudge pot for insects. Have just like some embers inside of a steel can. Of course, we didn't have embers, so we couldn't do that. And we weren't allowed to borrow embers from somebody else, so we lost all those points. So the next day, we go back out. So we're behind now. We're behind the 8 ball. We don't have the materials, but we have a whole new set of objectives to meet. So we go out, and on this objective, we had to find things. We were given a list of materials we had to find with no real instructions as to why. So we had to find a bunch of poles. I think we had to find like poles at 6 feet. We had to find some poles at 3 feet. We had to find a bunch of rocks. We had to find some sand. We had to find some gravel. We had to find some chert. Anyway, there was a long list of things we had to find. And at that point, I think we were put into groups of 6 at this point, given the amount of materials we had to carry. But on top of all this objectives for the second day, we still have to find objectives for the first day. So we still had to go find our bow drill material. So I'd never seen tulip poplar before. I had no idea really what it looked like. But we're with, like I said, now we're with 6 people. And we're walking through the woods and we're picking up the materials that we need, the gravel and the sand and the poles. And we come across this tulip poplar. And I'm talking to, like I said, there's 5 other guys there, and they're like, yep, that's tulip poplar, definitely. Look at the shape, look at the leaf, yada, yada, yada. And it was down on the ground, it was dead, it was dry. So there was no leaves on this tree. But look, there's tulip poplar all around it. So I was told. So we harvest a bunch of it and head back to camp. When we get back to camp, we're looking at it, and Dave and one of the other top instructors look at it, and we're getting ready to start processing this for bow drill. And he said, that's not tulip poplar, that's maple, which is not the hardest wood down there, but it's certainly one of the hardest woods that you're going to find, and certainly no good for a bow drill. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I can't go back out again. So I'm either going to sit here and twiddle my thumbs, or I'm going to make a bow drill fire to maple. So that's what I do. I start working on it, and I'm talking to the instructors about how to fine tune it and do it, and I do it. So at this point then, I've got like all of the instructors are kneeling down, like literally inches away from me, giving me pointers, go faster, harder, more pressure, slow down.
Because you were not supposed to be able to be successful with a hardwood.
No student has ever been able to do, or I was told anyway, that you can't do a bow drill at a maple. It's just too hard. So they're all looking at me to see if this can be done, or anyway, so I did it. So it was either that or fail the course. So I get a bow drill fire that night, which I think was, at this point, was my second bow drill fire ever, and certainly the first one on maple. So at that point then, so once I had the bow drill fire done, so then I'm still late. I didn't get that objective because I didn't meet the timing. So then I didn't meet the second objective because that should have been done on the first night as well. So now I'm kind of behind on the 8 ball then. But anyway, so now at least I've got, my confidence is back now, and I've got my bow drill fire done then, and so then I can start kind of catching up on some of the other objectives that we were behind on. But yes, I made a bow drill fire at a maple.
It's a great picture.
It takes a Canadian to make a bow drill fire at a maple.
So you were told. The only Canadian on the entire course, right?
I think so.
Was the bow drill fire the hardest thing you did while you were down there?